air traffic control versus pilots.
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. If you're into aviation at all, you know about the miracle on the Hudson. Even if you're not into aviation, you'll know about that story. Well, Cactus 1549 or US Airways 1549, the interaction between the pilots and air traffic control goes pretty quickly. So I decided to put that in this air traffic control versus pilot series, and of course, I have some funny ones in here as well. Let's get into it.
Cactus 1549, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds. We've lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. Who is it? It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529, which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines, he said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. If we can get it for you, do you want to try to land 1013?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
All right, Cactus 1549. It's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Cactus 1549, runway 4 is available if you want to make left traffic to runway 4.
I'm not sure we can make any runway. What's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey, maybe Teterboro?
Okay, yeah, off your right side is Teterboro Airport. Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire, actually LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound.
Hey, guys.
Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge wants to go to the airport right now.
Wants to go to our airport. Check. Does he need assistance?
Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280. You can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? Kelly 2760, contact New York 126.8.
26.8, Joey 27.6.
Cactus 1549, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles.
Man, that still gives me chills when I hear that. I never want to be in that situation. The pilot that you hear talking is Sully. Obviously, you know who that is. Sully is doing something that we get taught very, very early in flight school, which is how to handle something in this situation, which is to aviate, then navigate, and then communicate, and in that order. That's the order of priority that you need to have in any situation like this. Aviate, obviously, you need to fly the plane. If you're not flying the plane, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. Then navigate. Where are you going? He chooses to land in the Hudson, but he's looking at other options. He's looking at what other possibilities they can do, and then communicate. He's communicating in a very short and effective way to get air traffic control the information that they need to help them the most they possibly can. Aviate, navigate, communicate is something that's important always when you're flying, but in an emergency situation, it becomes very, very important that it goes in that priority. There have been cases where the pilots are too busy communicating, they forget to actually fly the plane, and then they get themselves into a lot of trouble. So they're putting the priorities here: aviate, then navigate, and communicate. It's something that all pilots know, and it's something that you need to keep in mind in a situation like this. You might go into the wrong airspace or something like that, but if you can safely land the plane, it's easier to fill out some paperwork than if you crash and you're talking the whole way as you're going down. So he's giving air traffic control the information that they need to give him what he needs, which is where else can I go? And he's making those air traffic controllers work for him. The other thing that's really worth noting here, and I don't think the air traffic controllers get a lot of credit for this, is how fast that controller that was working with Sully and that crew, how fast he was working as far as finding options, calling other airports, getting everything set up. He was giving Sully every possible option while he was talking with him, where he could go, headings, everything. And you can hear in his voice when they lose radar contact, I'm sure the pit of his stomach must have felt horrible.
Cactus 1549, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles.
Radar contact obviously means that the plane can no longer be detected by the radar, which means it's so low to the ground that the radar can't pick him up. Air traffic control's radars obviously is directed up towards the sky. So there's usually a lowest altitude that you're going to be able to be seen. Obviously he'd gone below that because he was landing in the Hudson. But when you lose a plane like that, you know there's going to be a problem. So even though all the information that the controller was giving and all the calls that he was making ended up being not useful at all, you can see behind the scenes, if you give them the information that you need in a real emergency, how fast and how much they will do to give you anything that you need to help safely get you on the ground again. So while in this series we do see pilots and air traffic control getting at each other and kind of nitpicking at each other, and sometimes they're fighting about different things, that does happen, and sometimes the controllers are wrong and sometimes the pilots are wrong. But the reality is that we're all on the same team when we're up there flying, and those controllers will do anything for you if you give them the information that they need in order to be able to help you. So he lets them know he lost an engine, where he's at, where he's going, and he's asking for options, and he's making that controller work for them. I was talking with a guy who used to fly single pilot all the time. He got jammed up in a really bad situation when he was flying by himself. And what he did is he made air traffic control get him all the frequencies that he needed and really put that guy to work to help get him on the ground safely. And those controllers will do it for you. They will make you a priority. They will clear everything out. When you declare an emergency, those controllers will do everything to help you get on the ground. You're gonna have to fill out some paperwork, but it doesn't matter in that scenario. So I thought it was important to acknowledge these controllers here because of how much they did. Even though what they gave him didn't change the outcome, it just shows you what they'll do for you when you give them a chance. Now in this next video, you're gonna see a different side of that if I was a pilot, I would be very annoyed dealing with this controller. Listen up.
579 Uniform Pop, we need a level up here at 2,000.
Uniform Papa for the minimum vector altitude, 2,600 to cruise.
All right, Uniform Pop. Get the seat. 5 fail Mike. Uniform Pop, declaring an emergency.
9 Uniform Papa, NorCal approach. How do you hear? 9 Uniform Papa, NorCal approach. Your flight on receiver. You're hearing me ident. Maintain 3,000. I can't hear him.
509 Uniform Pop, declaring an emergency. Need to turn to the field immediately.
9 Uniform Papa, NorCal approach. Understand you're declaring emergency. Are you able to maintain your own terrain and obstruction clearance?
Negative. Give us specters. A door flew off the aircraft.
9 Uniform Papa, climb maintain 2,600.
2,600 Uniform Pop.
9 Uniform Papa, fly heading of 260.
260 Uniform Pop.
Number 9 Uniform Papa, report level 2,600.
Uniform Pop, we're having a hard time climbing. Could you just send us back?
Roger, sir. I just have to climb you to the minimum vector altitude unless you can maintain your own terrain obstruction clearance.
Well, there's clouds around now, so we're trying to climb. It's not going well.
9 Uniform Papa, turn left, heading of 100, vector Stefan approach course.
Left turn 100 Uniform Pop. We're not climbing.
Number 9 Uniform Papa, and are you able to maintain your own terrain obstruction clearance?
So at the beginning, when the pilot declares his emergency, they're both talking on each other. We call it stepping on each other. But they can't hear what the other person is saying. Only pilots that are externally or people that were listening to the frequency would be able to hear that they're talking on top of each other.
Number 9.
5 fail Mike. Uniform Pop, declaring an emergency.
What typically happens in that scenario when both those transmissions start and end at the very exact same time, which is very rare, somebody will quickly key up and say blocked. But nobody did that in this scenario. So if you heard that, you had two options. Either let it play out like it did, or you could have one of the pilots that was listening to it say, ma'am, he's declaring an emergency. At that point, they're going to start communicating and getting into sequence like you heard later on in the video. Things are changing a little bit in the aviation with regards to declaring an emergency. Now they want you to say Mayday or Pan-Pan, and so you understand the difference between those two. Your Mayday is going to be, this is life-threatening. This is something that you need immediate situation or need help to get onto the ground because it's life-threatening. A Pan-Pan's like, you need attention, but you're not going to die over it. So there's two different ways to say, I need some help, and it kind of lets the air traffic controllers know just how much attention they need to give you. Versus declaring an emergency was kind of the blanket statement, which something has gone wrong, but they don't know the level of your emergency. So solely would be a Mayday. In my case, if I lost one of the engines on my plane, it would be a Pan-Pan, or maybe not even that. So you have to differentiate the level of emergencies as a pilot so that way the air traffic control knows how much attention they need to give you. When they both started talking to each other and then he didn't reply because he was busy flying the plane, she said, ident, listen.
9 Uniform Papa, NorCal approach. Your flight on receiver. You're hearing me ident. Maintain 3,000.
For those of you who aren't pilots, the ident in that scenario, sometimes what you have is you as a pilot have the inability to transmit back. You can hear air traffic control, but they can't hear you. So in some cases, air traffic control will say, ident or acknowledge to ident, and that lets you know if you hit that button that they can transmit to you, you can hear what they're saying so they can give you instructions, but that you're not going to be talking back. And what that does is put a blip on their screen saying, okay, he hears what I'm saying. So that's what that ident meant. The controller keeps asking for the pilot to maintain terrain and obstruction clearance because he can't get high enough.
Roger, sir. I just have to climb you to the minimum vector altitude unless you can maintain your own terrain obstruction clearance.
This is a legal thing, is my understanding, would be that he can't get high enough so that way he avoids everything that's on the ground there. But he can't climb because his door is hanging open. And that's not really the time to start adding a bunch of power and changing your configuration to go up more. Unless you're definitely going to hit a mountain, at that point you have to do it. But she keeps saying, are you going to maintain your own terrain and obstruction clearance? But he's saying, I'm in the clouds, I can't do that. Now San Francisco's got some mountains and it's got some tall buildings and it's got some things, but it's also next to the water. So at 2,000 feet, she could vector him and keep him out of that, but she is trying to avoid taking on the legal responsibility, and she's trying to pass that on to him by saying, can you maintain your own terrain and obstruction clearance? Which I think personally would really irritate me if I was in that situation. I know that's going to be controversial, and I know there's going to be controllers and pilots that are going to say, no, she was right to say those things, and that's fine. This is just my opinion. If I was in this scenario, I would want her to be helping me and telling me, hey, fly this heading, or keep me in the bay, or have me do circles or something, instead of continuing to repeat that. Now you're caught up to what's going on in this, but the second part, it gets really rough. Listen.
Cannot climb. I got to hold the aircraft. We cannot climb and we cannot maintain clearance because of the clouds.
Number 9 Uniform Papa, Roger, turn left, heading of 090.
509 Uniform Papa.
9 Uniform Papa, and verify you have information, Lima, San Francisco. Altimeter setting is 2992.
And you want us at a heading of 100 for Uniform Papa?
9 Uniform Papa, affirmative, left turn, heading 090.
Left turn 090, Uniform Papa.
And November 9 Uniform Papa, report the airport in sight, turn left, heading 070.
070, Uniform Papa. We're IMC.
9 Uniform Papa, San Francisco, altimeter setting 2992.
2992, Uniform Papa. Give me the localizer frequency. I can't get anything here. Our hands are full. 509 Uniform Papa. Requesting the localizer frequency for 10.
November 9 Uniform Papa, Roger, and standby. We're trying to get that set up. 9 Uniform Papa, turn right, heading 080. Join the localizer, intercept inbound.
Right turn 080. We need the frequency, please. The localizer frequency, 509 Uniform Papa.
Actually, November 9 Uniform Papa, the localizer is not available for runway 10.
Alright, what's the weather? Will we get the visual?
Do you have the airport in sight, November 9 Uniform Papa? The airport's 1 to 2 o'clock in 7 miles.
Uniform Papa, alright, we're still above the clouds, we're looking.
9 Uniform Papa, turn right, heading 100.
This truck's rolling, the store is hanging, and passengers, I think they're okay, but they're going to be pretty upset.
9 Uniform Papa, and the airport's still 1 o'clock and 4 miles.
Uniform Papa, alright, we're just coming over the clouds now. Uniform Papa, we have the airport in sight.
Some things to note here is that you can hear at the beginning of the emergency that the pilot is rattled. Obviously so. His door's ripped open, he's scared, he doesn't know what's going to be happening in the next couple seconds. So he's very rattled as far as what's happening and how's the plane going to fly. As he gets deeper in and sees that the plane is holding okay, the plane is flying fine, he knows, okay, we're flying, which means we're okay and we can get back on the ground safely. So you can hear him relax a little bit. But I think he is flying by himself. The other thing to note is that the air traffic controller, he is trying to get the air traffic controller to help him out, but she is not helping.
Give me the localizer frequency. I can't get anything here. Our hands are full.
He's trying to get her to give him a localizer frequency. And if you're unfamiliar with what a localizer is, that's how the pilots line up in bad weather. When we're in the clouds, that localizer tells us if we're left or right of the runway. So he's asking for that frequency. Without that exact frequency, he has no way to know where he is in relationship to the runway. And since he's by himself, we have an iPad or a book that has all those frequencies in there that we would normally have out. But in this scenario, he's there flying. The plane is not handling as it should, so he's there flying. He's not going to be able to find that, especially in a very short time that he needs to get it. So he's asking the controller, help me out, get me this frequency. But she doesn't get it. In fact, it's not even working. So there are two parts to that. One, you have a packet, a briefing that you get from that airport, which says these are all the things that's working or not working at a given airport. When you're leaving an airport, you're not generally going to read what is not functioning as far as getting back in there. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. You should. He should know that, but he didn't, obviously, because he didn't know about that runway. And again, in an emergency situation, he may not be thinking about that because he's got his hands full. However, the controller should know what is and isn't working at a particular airport that's in their airspace like that. Next, the controller says, do you have the weather at the airport?
9 Uniform Papa, and verify you have information, Lima, San Francisco. Altimeter setting is 2902.
Why would you ask him that in this particular scenario? If you needed to give them the weather, which we need in order to land, and I've talked about that in previous air traffic control versus pilot videos, you need to have that information. What would make more sense would be for the controller in this scenario to say, weather at the field is this, the wind is like this, the visibility is like this, the clouds are like this, and this is your altimeter setting. There's your information. Because the only way for us as pilots to get that information is to request it, listen to another frequency to get that information, or request it by putting it into a computer and shooting it off, and it will come back to us. But this guy probably is flying by himself, and that's not the time for him to be on another frequency to listen to the weather when he's there talking with the controller. The controller could give him that information and let him know, this is everything that you need to know, let's get you back in there. But the controller seems more concerned about protecting her legal liabilities by making sure that he avoids the terrain and things like that. And that's just my opinion, and I know there's going to be some hate from this, but really the controller should be giving him vectors to keep him away from hitting anything, telling him what the weather is, and then getting him low enough so he can break out and see the runway. If the clouds had been lower, they would have been in a real pickle, because she got him lined up with the runway, which was good, and then they broke out and was able to see the runway, so he was able to be visual and be able to go and land. So had the weather been lower, it would have been a problem, because she lined him up on a runway where that thing wasn't working to help him get lower to the ground. It worked out, but this is definitely a learning experience for any of the controllers that are there. The pilots, especially when they're flying by themselves, you need to give them as much possible assistance to help them in a scenario like this. He's loading her up with a lot of stuff that she's not normally asked for, and I get that. But this pilot is not used to having a door fly off his plane either, so he needs some help. If you've watched a lot of these videos, you know I tend to be tougher on the pilots than I am on the controllers, but in this scenario, the controllers should have done a lot of different things. Everything worked out okay, but that's fine. But the controller should have done a lot of different things to not have it get this bad, because a few different things, one way or the other, could have made this a problem. Now, some criticism for this pilot. While he did a great job, he remained calm, he flew the plane first, he navigated, he communicated, he did all the things that he needed to do to get the plane safely on the ground. Like he said, I'm sure his passengers weren't very excited, but his radio phraseology is terrible. The way he's communicating and some of the shortcuts that he's taking and what he's saying, like uniform pop instead of papa, things like that. I just want to say, if you're planning on being a pilot, do not get into that habit, because it's fine that the size of the aircraft that he's flying, he's probably normally just doing US domestic stuff, or maybe Canada, or maybe Mexico. But you start flying to other countries, when you're saying things like that, and you're not saying the full thing that you should say, which is papa, you're not saying those things, it's going to confuse and complicate your life. And if that's the habit that you have, then in an emergency, you're going to be going to that habit. Like in every one of these breakdowns that I talk about, the end result worked out okay. The pilot did a great job, I think, as far as for his ability to navigate, his ability to communicate, minus his poor phraseology and his aviation skills. Having a door come open is not something that we normally train for. I don't know how the aircraft was handling, but he was able to get back around and safely land the aircraft again. So you have to commend him for that result. Same with the controller. I'll have some criticism for her. I think she could have done many things better. I realize that she has certain legal liabilities and certain responsibilities, but there's a lot of things, in my opinion, that she could have done to help that pilot out in this scenario. She was slow to know about the localizer frequency. She didn't know that it wasn't in service. She was trying to get the pilot to listen for the information for the weather, and she kept asking them if they were clear of clouds, when he clearly wasn't. She knew where the clouds were, so she should know that he wasn't able to maintain his own separation from the terrain. So at the end of the day, the result was fine, and that's great. I'm glad it worked out, and hopefully this is a huge learning experience for her as far as for how to handle emergency, because the truth is while I'm here critical of what she did, I've never been an air traffic controller. I have been in some emergency situations, and you can say what you want about someone, but until you're in their shoes, you don't really know. So that's why it's easier for me to be critical of a pilot than it is a controller, because I know from a pilot's perspective what we need and what we are expected to do. A controller situation is a little bit different. I'm curious to see if the controllers in the comment sections are defending her or are agreeing with a lot of the things that I'm saying here, and I guess we'll find out. Something that has become kind of a habit is I put a funny one at the end here. And this is funny for me, probably wasn't funny for the pilot, and I don't think it was really funny for the plane that went around or for the controller, but I find it entertaining.
Cessna 4 Echo Kilo, right turn on Echo, contact ground 121.8.
4 Echo Kilo, I am looking for my...
It's the next right turn right next to you. You need to make it turn right now. Echo Kilo, you got it. Exit the runway and then call ground on 121.8. It looks like you're now making a 180. Frontier 667, go around.
Go around, 667.
Cessna 4 Echo Kilo, what are you doing now, man?
I missed it. I couldn't get on the Echo. I was already past it.
Yeah, you weren't, but go down to the next one. Go down to Delta and then taxi into Signature on Charlie.
Yeah, you weren't. I thought it was kind of funny the way she said that to him. This is funny because I've been there. When you're a student pilot, you have sensory overload. You're having to fly the plane, which is a lot of stuff that your brain is trying to process. You're trying to communicate on the radio. You're hearing other planes like this Frontier flight that's behind them. You're trying to see the taxiways. You've got a lot of different things that are going on and you can get overwhelmed, which is what this pilot did. He got so confused that he was getting off on the right taxiway, but then thought he was on the wrong one, so he thought it'd be smarter to turn around and go back on the runway. Doesn't really make any sense to me.
It looks like you're now making a 180.
Something to remember, if you're deciding to ever become a pilot, is that once you land, it's good just to get off the taxiway. Unless you specifically request, can I roll to the end, or can I land long, or things like that. It's best as soon as you land and you're at a slow enough speed to get off the runway, then to get off the runway. Because you don't know who's behind you. You may think that you have a lot of space, but you don't. You may have someone behind you that's taking off that just didn't pay attention or didn't know they needed to talk on the radio. Most people aren't going to take off or land on taxiways, minus a couple people. But most people are not going to take off and land on a taxiway, so it's safer to just get off onto the taxiway. The first one that you see, and then get on there. Then you can figure out where you're at and get oriented and figure out how to get to where you need to go. Now, if you do choose to ask the controller to land long or roll to the end, you want to keep up your speed. I've seen scenarios where pilots land and they're on this long, super slow rollout, and I'm thinking, you're not even going any faster than you would if you were on a taxiway. Doesn't make any sense. So if you're going to ask that, roll quickly to the end and then get off the runway. You will want to be on the runway as little as possible. It's not the best place to be hanging out or spending any time. You get on there when you're ready for takeoff, you land and you want to get off. That's how you should treat a runway. Something that I did, I remember the very first time that I landed at a big airport, it was Houston International. We landed, and if you ever landed at Houston, it's complicated. It's got 2-letter taxiways. It's a lot of information. They talk really fast because they expect you to be professional. I was a newer pilot. I was flying corporate. I landed there, and it was like, whoa, this is a lot of information that's going on. And what I learned from that was, when I'm getting ready to land somewhere that I'm not familiar with, before I even go or before I get ready to land, I look at everything. Where am I going to land? Where am I going to be going to? And roughly, what are they going to tell me? And that gives me some expectations of what they're going to say to me. And what that does is it gives me a basic idea of where I'm going and the taxiways I should get. That way I know if I get off at Echo, I just need to go Alpha and Delta to park or whatever it is, and I know the direction I'm turning, left or right, all that stuff. So it's important, and that's part of being prepared as a pilot. There's a lot of stuff to it, weather, radios, flying, all of it. Most people only see just the flying part. They think that's the hardest part. As you saw here, taxiing on a busy airport, which this is not that busy, but taxiing on a busy airport can be more overwhelming than flying a plane. I know it seems crazy, but it's just how it is. If you want to see another air traffic control versus pilots, check out this video here. And I talked about the Hollywood versus reality that I did on Sully, and it was, 2 years ago when all I had was my camera phone propped up in a window sitting in a hotel in Germany. If you want to see that, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.